This is the Lekker Rugby Pod with Harry Jones and MV Velman.
It's the Lekker Rugby Pod, is episode 8. I can't believe we're 8 episodes down the road already, but yeah, here we are. Hello, Harry.
How's it? Now we're feeling lekker again, no? This is the proper name of the pod. It's like we're going back to our school lessons. Vasco da Gama, Bartholomew Diaz, 1486, 1581, whatever. They was running around. They were navigators. They came back to our shores. I don't know about you, but there was a high school. All Capetonians will know about this high school. It was where the Greeks and Portuguese went to high school and they played rugby. And they were a mixture, like it was like Spiro and Ferreira was the most common names of Christian name and surname. And we played these guys who were like 10, 11, 12, and they were like literally coming into the game smoking, like holding a cigarette like this, like a dock worker, because they were all sons of dock workers. And they had full beards at age 12. Like you get razor burn in the scrum. And then you'd play them again 3 years later, they're the same size. So I saw this moment where Arceus Neyman was surrounded by 4 wolves, and he was literally like, he was just throwing them around until they leg swept him and put him down on the turf. But I don't know about you, but 20, 30 years ago, if you said to me, there's going to be a woman referee in Bloemfontein, there's going to be a Muslim Bok captain, and we're going to be more diverse than the team we're facing, we might have thought we were in La La Land. I thought it was really a brilliant time for Bloom to shine, for their roses to bloom, and for people to see what a really happy atmosphere it can be on test day, because half of the stadium was actually cheering for the Portuguese, and I think even people who were obviously Bok fans were happy to see tries being run in from all directions.
That's one thing that I wanted to just mention that I also noticed. You know what, we've got like you just mentioned, there's a very big Portuguese community in South Africa. And I tell you, not one of those people in the stadium begrudged the Portuguese, scoring a try or anything. It wasn't like last weekend where there was like mortal enemies and we don't want to keep, we should win the fight and the game and we should win everything. We just love these Portuguese, the way they played. They arrived, actually pitched up for the game, which I think I was a little worried about after seeing how they did against Namibia. But I think at the end of the day, you can't say it was a proper test match in the sense it was like the All Blacks or anything, but they really gave them all their all. And I think we as a South African rugby-loving community learned a lot, actually. I think this is probably our new favorite team, apart from our own team, if you ask me.
Yeah, there are a couple of things that a test coach has to be able to do. One of those is if you have your provinces, let's say that you're Ireland and you have 4 provinces, you cannot just always pick the Leinster guys under the theory that they're winning. So I'm not going to have a Connacht guy or not going to have a Munster guy or Ulster guy. Actually, the really good coaches are able to see through that. The second thing is, how do you judge players in kind of a loafer where the score is kind of easy, where you're not really tested? And how do you judge Ben Jason Dixon when they're playing Portugal and so forth? I thought it all kind of lined up perfectly for Rassie and Tony and Jerry because the cards. So suddenly you had to scramble, and it wasn't South Africa versus Portugal. It was 13-man box against 15. That's good. So you see, you see whose tank is full. You see who can go the extra mile. You actually see if Lucanio Arm is healthy or not, because he has to be the whole midfield. you have to see, and it's also for Portugal. It'd be like they were playing the final of the World Cup, so they were really up for it. So you're getting the best version of Portugal with a 2-man deficit, and you've got no combinations really on the field. I think that's good. I think Rassie probably did learn a lot from that, because there's some positions, we're in an all-time era of continuity. And so it's kind of good for him to see whatever that word is, discontinuity. It's good for him to see, how does a guy work under that pressure? Is Ruas the real deal or not? Can you see the difference between a Manie and a Sacha Feinberg, Ngomazulu? Like, what do those things look like? And I think Portugal, my hat's off to them. Portugal did give the Bok brain trust an ability to do some of that measuring and calibration.
Just before we go on to the test, I wanted to ask you one question. And, our last video on the ever-exploding Lekker Rugby Pod really elicited a lot of response, especially from Irish fans. Initially, it was quite complimentary and we all loved each other and was nice and well. Towards the end, it's starting to get a bit more heated and a bit more personal, I think, and, we just look at it. The point I'm asking is, did we miss not having a third test? That wasn't a mistake not going for the third test to put these things to bed, do you think?
I think before we knew that all the guys had broken legs and broken souls, maybe we would have said, we want the third test decider. I'm not really sure what would have happened if there was a third test decider. Who would have been on the field for both of these teams? So there's a San Francisco agreement that was in place to encourage tier 1 teams to play tier 2 teams. So there's not just World Cup, Portugal, Georgia, the sensations, but inside the cycles, they would have an ability to improve. So if the rugby's better interest is to have more teams able to compete, then I think that's good. In the particular case of Ireland versus South Africa, where there's like bad blood, there's a scores not settled, there's a reckoning, there's a rectification, whatever word you want to put, it didn't feel right. It felt like the whole rugby world, even besides the Bok and Irish fans, really did want to see these two kill each other for the third. They wanted to see a British and Irish Lions decider, with a kick to end it by Mornay Stain, that kind of thing. I think that's fair enough. But you cannot change things in the middle. It takes a lot of planning to have a test match at all. So overall, net, probably it builds a soap opera ending again, which is, we have to wait all the way till November. Both sides have their arguments. The blood gets badder and the revenge gets sweeter.
And it's November next year. It's another full 16 months that we have to wait for this. And
yes,
this has to percolate. And by the time it gets to November, it's going to explode. Never mind, boil over. That's good. Something to look forward to. Right. We were talking about this game against Portugal. And, it's like you said, it was arranged since 2018. It's been long time coming. We had a lot of time to plan for it. Rassie typically would have planned for it when he was appointed in 2018 as coach, the way we know him. What do you think they wanted to learn from this test? And they picked quite an experimental side, which I want to say something about. But just start in terms of objectives. What would the Boks have wanted to get from this game, do you think?
Yeah, so I think if you look at the big map, which is Springboks have actually been had the most continuity besides Ireland over 2015, 19, 23, 27 map. If you look at it, it's actually stark. I've put something up on the socials where you can see the dark green, this incredible, obvious first choices when healthy, Eben, Peter Steff, Pollard, Damon Dialende, Willie Leroux, and then natural heirs of succession, Damian Willemse. I've always said the 15 sort of reflects the coach's personality. So you look at Willie, Willemse, Sacha, this looks like how if Rassie was a 15, he would play. You have incredible continuity in the midfield where you have Kriel, Dialende, with a little bit of Andre, who never seems to pan out on the test level as much as we want him to. At the wings, you have Lekkerbacks. You have an entire cohort of Lekkerbacks. So they're all kind of interchangeable. I mean, KLA, Edville, Colby, but Pimpy, they all know what to do. They know how to chase, they know how to defend. Then you have into the pack, you have, some of the world's best tight forwards. You have France, you have Kitshoff, you have natural successorship with Malcolm and Bongi. What they wanted to see from tests like Portugal was, so who are the successors? Successor planning without much risk. So who is my 15 successor? Who's my 23? Who's my France Stain, Willemse kind of type? And is there Sacha, or can Sacha run the ship? Are there things we can learn from loose forwards? Can we have Lowe, Ruiz, and Dixon on the field in similar situations and see how quick they get off the floor, their ability to stretch, their stopping power, their ability to make good decisions? I think there was plenty learned. I think they would go back and say, and I think this Bok coaching group really does value real world testing. It's kind of like Human saying there's no scrum machine. I want to see a real scrum. I think until you see Dixon pick the ball from the base and know, like Peter Steff du Toit, when to go over it. You see that incredible burst he had late in the game, plenty of gas, the vision, the ability to stretch and score when you know you have enough length. I was surprised how long the guy looked. I thought that he looked like a lock flank, like Peter Steff du Toit. I thought he was just as skinny as Peter Steff was when he started. I think he had just the same kind of athletic build that he's able to still add 5 kgs onto. So for me, Dixon was one of those big results where some people said about a month ago, like, why him? Why not someone else? And he did look like he fit the part. On the other hand, I don't know about you, but I thought Ruas is steadily making himself. He always had a personality problem, right? Where there was whispers that he wasn't that liked inside the camp, that other players don't like him, that his dad's more of an irritant than a help, that he picks the wrong times to act like a big tough guy, and he picks the wrong times to shrink. I feel like against Portugal, he needed a really barnstorming, smashing role. And I thought Lowe actually looked better in more limited time. He got more done.
Yeah, about that team, which I wanted to say, when we looked at it on paper on Tuesday when they announced it, I thought to myself, this team on its own will probably be a top 10 team in the world as it is. It's pretty talented guys in that team. I just wanted to say that's an aside. And then on Friday night, I was watching the game at Loftus with my laptop in front of me like a good student of the game. And he sent me this spreadsheet that you just referred to with the continuity from 2015 already. Pollard was there and Kriel was there. And the one thing, you asked me the question, how many of these players will still be there in 2027? The thing that jumped out at me is there's no way we're going to get there.
Not all of them. Yeah,
no,
not all of them.
Not all of them. So the point was, we needed to start getting the succession planning in place. So but when we get to 2027, we are there. Now, the question now is, did the boxes get ticked? Did the questions get answered? That's the kind of thing you mentioned now, Roos and Ben Jason Dickney, for example. But Bongi is getting on in here. So let's talk about hookers. Marks has been injured again. He should be fine, I think, for the second test or so. So they had to test the depth at hooker. And I think the one guy that really stood out and has been knocking on the door for ages now and has been attending one alignment camp after the other, but never getting a chance, is Johan Grobler. I think he played excellent. He excelled on the day.
Athletic guy. If you take the prototype of Malcolm Marks being possibly, with Sheehan, Dan Sheehan and Malcolm Marks, that new generation of hooker where they're not just athletic, barnstorming, nuggety guys that run over like a fire hydrant. They're actually rangy. I mean, they play like an extra loose forward. They literally are a flank. And so for the, except for that moment where they're in the scrum or throwing in the line out, they're basically an extra flank. I think Robillard has that same kind of engine. I do think we learned something from there. There were also really good shifts put in by Jan-Hendrik Wessels. I thought Hugo Venter, I think all the hyphenated guys played really well. You had Ben Jason Dixon, you had Sacha, you had Jan-Hendrik, you had Andre Hugo, you had, who else can we put? Just find hyphenated players and we're going to be okay. The graph that you're talking about is basically this kind of depiction of how dark green is the people who've been around. So people that are literally four World Cuppers. I'm going to tell you right now, I've done a study across the 8 top teams, and it's just Ireland and South Africa. It's not a coincidence that these are number 1 and 2 and rivalries, because caps matter. And Rassie and those guys know they have to bed these caps in. So they kind of have to right now decide, are we going to put those caps into Ruas, Lowe, Dixon? We cannot say all. It's not, you cannot keep doing that, because against the All Blacks, you're not going to have 3 guys on the 23. So I think it's actually very programmatic. It's interesting. I think all Bok fans should say, is Salman Moerat up to it as a lock? These are good questions. Is Fepsi Buthelezi, is that explosive power wasted in a test when it gets tighter? I mean, against Portugal, there's plenty of room, but even against Portugal, I didn't see as much of Buthelezi as I did guys like Dixon and Lowe, because they have the ability to run through traffic. That old NFL stats of yards off the contact, yak. What's your yak? In a test match, you can see what people's yak is, because you're never going to run free. There's very few times that a forward will have that kind of space. So I think it's a good thing to do. I think it's interesting to look at how some players play better at test level than at club level. I think it's interesting how a guy like, you have someone at the Jake White, for example, obviously a good coach. John Dotson, obviously a good coach. These are good coaches. They've actually been praised for how good they are at finding talent. But you can use someone differently at test level, and sometimes a guy like Sacha gets lost a little bit in the shuffle, and you put him at test level, and you can immediately see, unless you're completely dumb and blind, you can see that he is absolutely thriving at test level. He sees space when no one else sees space. He has time on the ball, not flustered. He does it inside out, banana kick that bounces just right. And you could tell he planned it exactly how that was supposed to do. Fassi showed some of those touches as well. And I've been a critic of Fassi. I am a Fassi critic probably. But it looks like at that level, he's able to find space. So, no, I think overall we can say that was a good day out. I like to overreact to these things too. Is it fun to just say,
I know
rugby will never be the same again because Sacha is here? I put that out there, and I saw that Nick Feinberg jumped on it and liked it. But I thought Ben Jason Dixon was one of the big finds for me in that Pieter-Steph is a really weird hybrid kind of player, and if you can find a guy like that has that kind of engine, 800-meter runner kind of in that big body, that's a good thing.
The funny thing about Pieter-Steph is that he actually started out as a lock and moved to flank. It's typically the other way around. As they get older and slower, but you still want them in the team, you move them the other way around. Am I right?
That's true, but Pieter-Steph always wanted to play. If you read sort of the things he said when he was young, he actually really wanted to play number 8 sometimes. He wanted to play flank. He was just that he was such a rangy line-out option. People stuck him in. He was always the tallest kid, But he was an 800-meter runner. He was like on the Malmesbury, athletics team. He's a guy who has actual athletic ability. When he's in the trams running, you're not thinking, oh, no, give it to a back. You're thinking it's fine. He makes good decisions. And he's, I think Dixon looked like that kind of player. Like, you didn't feel nervous when he was going. Also, let's have a shout out to Sneeman, because Achie Sneeman was literally so unconcerned with tackles that he was always looking for the better and better offload. I mean, the guy is just sort of an offload artist. I would love to just see a package of all the ways he offloads from the ground, around the neck, through the legs. It doesn't matter because he's so unconcerned with the tackle. No one seems to be able to jar him. It took 4 guys to get him down on the ground, off the ball, but on the ball, no one seems to be able to really smash him back.
It's a matter of center of gravity. When he's that tall, you have to chop it right at the bottom, like a tree. You can't chop a tree over here. You have to chop it at the bottom. And they can't get that low. The funniest remark I saw in that video you posted about the Wolfpack tackling RGS, that looked like Munster trying to get their salary back from
Yeah,
that was the best one. But talking about rangy and fast and quick players, and players maybe not being recognized for who they are or what they can do, and then showing what they're worth at test level. I want to get back to Jan-Hendrik Wessels. Now in Pretoria, he's been reviled a little bit because he misses throw-ins in the lineouts. He's cost the Bulls countless games where he overthrew on a critical 5-meter lineout on attack. Now suddenly, and I know he started out as a prop originally, but he's been living in the shadow of Johan Grobler. But I know from experience and from Jake's own mouth that he believed very strongly in Jan-Hendrik's ability. So Rassie moving him to prop, okay, maybe not. I'm still not convinced about his scrumming ability against a proper scrumming team. But what he brought to the game in all other aspects, loose and running and attacking and defending and whatever else, that to me was also a revelation. Even the Grobler as a combination next to each other rather than instead of each other opened up a new world for me. I was quite surprised, I must say that. I didn't expect that.
Yeah, so this gets into the age issue. So like Wessels is 23. Most people think that a front rower is only a really proper front rower when they're about 27, 28. You look at the high cap guys that you have to, like you said, not all these guys are going to make it to the 4th cup. And then you wonder, and you never know who it's going to be. Like it could be the Malherbe, because he takes care of his body, sails through, and Kitshoff doesn't. Or, Villiers Roux might be done because of head knocks. But you look at some of the high cap guys, France at 72 caps, Bongi 71, Nyakani 68, surprisingly, Mark 67. And these guys are all around 30, 33, 33. Koch is 34. You start to look at that and you say, yeah, it's interesting because even a late bloomer like Ox Inche, we think he's young, he's 31. So there's a cause to be made that in 2027, Wessels would be 26 or 27. That's perfect. So when you're trying to recruit succession, you're not just saying, who's my guy who's 28, who's been around for a while, maybe has some more wear and tear. What if I get someone right now and groom them and bring them in? I think that's what they're trying to think about with Wessels. I think that's what they're thinking about with Fenta, who's 22. Let's see. Munche Chuno is 25. Across you look at the 25 and less crowd, and you can see that the thinking there is, we can teach you to throw into a line out. We can teach you to scrum. Don Human is a really good teacher in the scrum. If you're able to be there before a match for about an hour, it's worth it, guys. Go and watch Don do a clinic in the scrum. 2 complete scrums. Dwayne Vermeulen there at number 8, measuring. He's got an actual ruler out. He's got forces, shear. He's got 3 guys around it. He's got physio behind him. They treat these things like science. And so I think you can make a guy like Wessels a prop. If you have the right core strength and you have the right teachability, I think that's what they're thinking there.
Yeah, okay. Let's just get back to the Pieter Steph, not replacement, but sort of a backup. Let's call it that, because I'm sure he will still be around 2027. And we talked about Ben Jason Dixon. Ulrich didn't play at number 7 this week and played at number 8, surprisingly. I didn't see that coming. But Ruan Venter, your impressions of him? I see people have been actually quite impressed with him.
Hard man. Eyster. I think he's the kind of guy that grows into the role. I always joked about Elstad. Reinhard Elstad was the guy that if you're playing on the same team as him, you had more to worry about him than the other guy, because he would clean you out too in the back. So I think Venter looks like a smarter version of Elstad. And I know that Rassie always really preached the idea of a guy like Elstad, because he's just a guy who's like uncompromising, he's an eraser. He's a guy, he's just someone who's going to erase you. And I think Venter has that kind of body. He has that love of collision. The Skalkberger speed up on that final 2 meters into collision. I was really impressed. I mean, again, that's where I think you have to measure, what does Portugal teach you? On the stakes of, can you shift bodies? Can you move the piano out of the apartment? I don't know if Portugal gives you that much of a read. I think Portugal gives you a better read in the backs, actually, or in just straight up engine, Dixon going still. I would like to be able to, I want to see if Venter can move, Rob Valentini, or can he move Fraser McWright? Can he move Tupou Vai? Can he move Luke Jacobson? I think those are different propositions than the Portugal pack.
The one thing that I don't think any questions were answered, and more than a few new ones were added, is it's 8th man. I mean, after Dwayne, he now seems to be running up and down the field as a water boy. Like Marcel Coetzee used to say, probably one of the most well-paid water boys in the world. But the point is that we miss him, and we tried Quagga. He didn't work out. We thought maybe Roos is the answer, but he's not. I don't think he's the answer. Ulrich, I was surprised to see at 8. I mentioned it before. He didn't do too badly, but whether he's a long-term answer, I don't know. What was your take on that?
I think Jasper Wiese is still the man there. I think they groomed him well. He's still pretty young, actually. He's only 27. He got a lot of miles on him, though. But I think having a reliable carrier when you at stop-start, you're starting from a standstill, and you still get over the gain line. So here's the thing about out the back with rush Ds. If you face a rush D, like a real rush D, like a hammer rush, which like the Boks, even a rush umbrella, like it used to be a little bit, it's actually more important to get over the gain line on your first carry than it was before rush Ds, because your fly-off has to stay way behind the gain line. So you need enough space for him to go out the back. And the ability to make that second pass before the tackle ensues, like before the Lacanio crash tackles you ball and all, or Jesse Kriel gets you got to have enough space. So having a guy like Jasper Wiese who is reliable, and that you don't have to baby him. You didn't have to give Dwayne, and you don't have to give Jasper much of a lead up. That is the thinking behind Roos. So Roos does have explosive athletic ability. He has other problems that weigh him down. Number one, his rugby brain, just the time, place, and manner of why you want to act the way you act. It just seems like he either checks out when something doesn't go his way, hangs his head, spills the ball in contact too much, or doesn't really attend enough rucks in a meaningful way. So Wiese does all those things, and he didn't, but now he does. And, if you put that many caps into a guy, what has he got? 27 caps, 28 years old. So that's the kind you don't want to waste that. The question is, who's your backup? And I think that's what's being answered right now with Lowe, Ruiz, Buthelezi, these kind of hybrid loose forwards. I think you're right though that the question marks around the Ruiz are not getting answered, and in fact, there's a feeling that he's a flat track bully. And then when he gets a flat track bully situation against Portugal, he didn't take advantage of it. Whereas you looked at frothing at the mouth, rabid dog Lowe and Dixon, you thought, yeah, they want this. And I think Rassie really does care about the want this part, but he also wants you to not be a card risk. I think he was pretty upset about Andre because that is an avoidable situation. There's no reason to go in that high to a midfield clash. He worked really hard with Jasper Visa. Visa in the Premier should cut that stuff out. I mean, it's kind of ironic that he got, that flip over thing carded him. But before that, he was really card free for a long time. And Leicester Tigers fans love that guy because he's just a bread and butter. So I still think it's Visa because he's shown that he has an ability to play against the All Blacks, Ireland, and those guys without getting a card. Whereas we don't know about Ruiz. And then Lowe probably needs a little bit of kgs added to be a proper, carrier, like a real heavy carrier at this level. You would look at some of the stats, though, and say the Boks had, what was it? They had a really good average, 5.2 meters per carry against Portugal, and they were 2 men down. So a lot of that was, against 2 tacklers. So they're getting punch when Kwacha was not the carrier. So I think that the coaches would like that. I still think, though, incumbency matters in the Boks. I don't think you lose your spot to injury. I don't think you lose your spot because of a card. I think Visa will come back in.
And Hanekom, as a Blue Bull supporter, I would love to see him start every game. And I know he's been injured and everything. We've been having a little bit of a back and forth there on our socials. I'm a staunch Hanekom supporter as much as I am a Sacha supporter. And I'm still advocating for the Bulls to go buy him. And I'm going to get a lot of flack for that. And I said it in so many words. If Sacha starts playing for the Bulls, it'll set the world on fire. But anyway, Hanekom, do you think he's maybe a better bet for the future? I know this is sort of I don't know how to explain this. A battle tank, to a degree, when I picture it, if I have to draw an analogy. And Hanekom is more of almost a PSP kind of a guy with a bit of Dwayne, thrown into a lot of that physical aggro and the likes. I'm trying to think of a more apt analogy, maybe not a battle tank, maybe a bucky, double cab bucky or something. 4x4 though. Yeah. You know what I'm trying to get at? It's more athletic, but he's got the bulk and he's got the rugby brain you referred to. If I noticed, and I talked about this before, to me, he seems to be a natural successor, maybe in the longer term, but he's still also 22, as we've been repeatedly reminded in the past. But I think to me, he's one of the bright sparks, one of the guys to look out for.
There's plenty of loose forwards, right? So South Africa breeds loosies like no one else. If you went back about 7 years, there were no 9s, and now there's too many 9s. There's always been too many loosies. So someone's going to be unlucky. Someone that would start in other tests, other nations, is not going to get picked. And so this gets into much more about style of play. An 8 is also one of your variables in a team. Like there are different kinds of 8. There's the pick-a-moles, there's the Aldrit kind, there's the Artie Surveyor. These are all different types of 8s. And so I think that gets into style. It's no knock on the player who doesn't get picked sometimes. So what is Hanekom? Hanekom is like a forward version of Sacha in that he's a transcendent athletic talent. You're just around Cam Hanekom for a while and watch him work. He does things that other people cannot do. Visa can do something that other people cannot do either, which is, 5 guys on you, snuck up against the touchline, and he can still batter you into oblivion. He can batter you into tomorrow, and you can look back and say, but he's not big enough. He's not that tall. I've stood right next to him. He's literally just a normal size height guy. But through the haunches, through the flanks, through the arse, the guy just looks like he cannot be tackled. Yak doesn't lie. One of the best stats you could ever look at is yards, meters, post contact. And Visa is hard to put down. Literally won a World Cup final because of his inability to be tackled. I think coaches like that because it's controllable. Like, you cannot take it away from me. It's like Archie Sneeman. You cannot take that away from me. I'm rangy, I'm big, I'm strong. So they like those controllables, and Visa has those. So can Hanekom be that, or do the Boks want a Mornay Duplessis, Kieran Reid, someone who can feed and link? I suspect the latter. I think that part of the evolution of the Boks is not to stay stuck and just win one way, but to say everyone's chasing you, so they're going to power up. France can have just as big a pack. Australia might have a bigger pack. All Blacks look like they're powering up. So what if we could have a movable tank weapon? We can have that moving aircraft carrier. So Hanekom could be the solution down the line. Right now, today, you got to win a test against the All Blacks in Ellis Park. And right now, you go visa. And you hope the Hanekom comes along. And you hope that you have a ding-dong battle royale between Hanekom, Lowe, Ruiz, Buthelezi, whatever you want, and see who can attain these other skills. It wasn't like Visa always had offloading skills. He didn't, but he learned to have those. Now he looks for the offloading contact.
We talked about, when Sia and Peter Steph du Toit is going exploring in the trams there, on the edges. The guy in the middle that remains behind, which used to be Kwagga in the first two tests, have a lot of work to do in terms of covering and loose and everything else. You said Kwagga was too small, didn't make enough tackles. In that sense, Visa also makes a bit more sense, in the sense that he's more physical. He can take on 2 or 3 players, take them out of the game, and give these other guys time and space to roam around on the edges. Am I reading that right, or what?
No, you got that. But side to side quickness, if you kind of look at speed and quickness as two different things, and speed would be straight line speed, vertical, and you look at quickness being side to side. Like touch a flag, that drill you do. Hanekom's he's substantially better than all the other Lucies at that particular skill. But now we're going to get into another skill, which is always underestimated, which is durability. And it's hard to put your finger on it. There are unlucky injuries. There are things that just happen to you. But there are some players. I think of someone right now, it's going to be weird, Mornay Steyn, who just didn't get injured. And you go, oh, it's luck. People are just made differently. You can look at the way ligaments are attached to knees, and you can look at certain fibers. So we're going to have to see if Hanekom can stay healthy. If he stays healthy, then he's like Pierre Spies with more aggro. I mean, he's just really a really, really good player. I think you look at the other guys and you say, I think Ruiz does have that durability. He looks like a tank. And then you look at some other guys and you go, oh, I'm not sure. And it's not even like a body type. Like, it looks like to me, you look at a guy sometimes and then you think they'll break, and they never do. Like Mostert, you have to break his leg before he can go off of a game.
Literally.
He doesn't look like much, but that guy never gets injured. I mean, literally, I don't know. You have to literally break an actual bone for Mostert to go off. Yeah. So you have other guys that seem to always have a niggle, and they miss 5 games here and 6 games there. And I don't think Rassie wants to invest in a Lucy that's going to be off the pitch very long.
That's a good point, because Hanekom's had 2 serious injuries this year already. And basically, he's not the first year, but the second year, but, where really he's come to the fore. If I was Rassie, though, what I would do, just to be clever, is just to select him, play him 10 minutes off the bench, and then nobody else can pick him, like Wales, Warren Gatland.
I like that idea. There's a theory about people who are hyper athletic, I think us guys that were decently athletic, got a pretty good skill set, was a high jumper around 800 meters. But I like to say that the guys who were the sprinters, they got injured quicker. They got injured more easily. There is a theory about people who are hyper athletic. They get in positions that us normal, decently athletic guys would never put ourselves in, because we know if we do that, our knee's going to go. And so there's like sort of that high level. I think Sacha is one of those guys who, Willem is definitely one of those guys who can get in positions where you go, oh, that's not going to work. And he does it. He can track back, he can swivel, Chess and Colby. But there is that theory that those guys will put themselves in a position where their body goes, no, thank you. And then you're out with a hamstring or you got a knee. So Hanekom might have to pace themselves. There is a theory around a number 8, a loose forward in particular. If someone says, Peter Steph, we need you to go 80. Like, you have to go 80. That's our plan today. Then you just approach rucks differently. You do different things. And Peter Steph's a smart enough player to do that. He can say, Coach, you got me for 80 minutes. I will not get myself injured.
Just as a matter of, as an aside, when Moerat retired last year, he had a press conference here at Loftus, which we attended, and he attributed the fact that he never got injured to the fact that he did gymnastics at school. And he was
Really?
quite good at, yeah, that's where it came from.
Huh.
He said that's why he never got injured.
That's interesting, and some of the props nowadays, the way scrums are adjudicated and the bond you got to take, and the lack of a hit than a second hit, all of it conspires to the fact that these big guys, we always call them fatties, they have to be really flexible now. And some of the ones that, people don't understand how flexible a guy like Frans Malherbe is. He's really flexible. Like, he can put his hand behind him in ways that, the normal skinny guys cannot. So I think in all these areas of rugby is evolving, and it's no longer just like the biggest grunt. It's also the guy who can take care of the body. Otherwise, all your plans come undone. We can have all these plans you want, but if everyone's injured in 2026, it's not going to really work.
All right, now let's get to the main burning question in all South Africans' minds tonight, and that's whether it's going to be Sacha or Manie, or both, either one of them or neither of them. And I'll put it up there right now. I don't think Manie played all that badly. If Manie kicked those kicks, and we'll get to that just now, because I've got a bit of a bugbear about that. Manie did well. I said, 61 meters made, beat 4 defenders, 1 clean break, 5 carries, 13 passes, 3 kicks, but 3 missed goals. I mean, if someone can just take the time, I know Rassie now said after, but we're getting Tony Brown to get him. Tony Brown's not a kicker. I mean, he was a fly off in the likes. Get someone like whoever, Naas Botha, Bram van Straten, a proper kicking coach. Why not? Why not? You've got all these other assistant this and assistant that, and deputy that coach and physio. Get a place kicker. I mean, Jordan said specifically the angle is wrong. You can clearly see it on TV. The way the angle that he attacks the ball at is wrong. Simple adjustment, and you can do better. Why would a technical guy like Rassie not go to the trouble of sorting out the kicking problem? Then you have an exceptional fly-off at your disposal, but he's going down this whirlpool, a wormhole of self-doubt and everything every time he misses a kick. And it's to me, it doesn't make sense.
That's an interesting point you've raised there, actually. There's a coach for everything except for kicking. And kicking being such a vital part of the game, not only kick out of hand, but also kick from the tee. It's also highly coachable. Once upon a time, we keep picking up Moerat, and Moerat was a running fly-off. He was not known for being a good kicker. He had the yips sometimes. And then he became one of the most reliable dead-eye sharpshooters in the history of rugby, and was criticized for not running enough. So there is an ability to do that with someone. It's programmatic. It's a little bit like a setup on a golf tee. We know that swing coaches can take 3, 4, 5, 6 strokes off our game in golf. Why not be able to say, Manie, there's a way to approach the ball at 45 degrees. Why are you going at 49? Why are you going at 42? He has to set up earlier in that, because I think he has a lot of self-doubt, and then he goes into too many calculations. You can almost see it working in his head. Then I think, you start thinking about, oh my God, what if I miss? What if I miss the next one? What if I never hit another kick in my life? The weird thoughts we have in our brain. Mm-hmm. It looks like that's weighing on him. And even talking Moerat out of the decision to go for poles and say, no, I'm going to the touchline. That speaks of someone who has given up on their own God-given ability to kick the ball really well. His strike is pure. He hits the ball with that nice, sick thud. It always looks like it's going to get somewhere around the poles. It's not like he misses by 20. It's not like he's short. But you look at the difference when Sacha came on, and he would not only look like he was trying to literally motor the ball and kick it, where it's exploded. He looked like he was aiming for a spot, for the black dot. It was not even deviating. Whereas you look at Manie, and every single time he hits the ball, he looks like he's looking up nervously, wondering, how many people in South Africa are going to call for my head. So I don't know. Not every team puts everything on the fly-off. Boks tend to say number 10 has to kick. There's not going to be a Percy Montgomery anymore. There's not going to be, a number 9 doing it for you. So I think we're at the point now where Manie Libbok has had 15 tests for the Boks. You could say that in those 15 tests, there's been one glaring problem, and it is goal kicking. That's it. You would say that he played just as well as Sacha. You would say that he played remarkably well, actually, in that test. And you would actually look at games like, in Scotland in the World Cup, but you would look at some of the things he did and go, really, he's a bowler. No one else can do that. But I don't think you go into a World Cup cycle and continue with a fly-off that continues to put you in that kind of bind, because he was missing much more makeable kicks than Andre missed in that first one, but you always knew Andre would fix it and go 8 for 8. Like, you knew that. Like, instinctively, you knew that he would fix it. You don't know that with Manie. In fact, you can imagine a situation where he had 5 tests in a row where he was 50%.
Every single time he lines up, you wonder whether he's going to make it or not. Every time Andre or Sacha misses a kick, you're surprised. That's the difference.
Yeah.
And the thing is, you've often said this to me, it's like a golf tee or a golf swing. You stand too long, you build up lactic acid, which I never knew. That must explain my slicing and dicing. That must be that. And that's part of it. And then also that clock ticking in the corner. And even Damian McKenzie got a bit rattled by that. Someone must just pay a bit of attention to this guy's needs. He's an exceptional player, not just the kicking side of it, the mental side of it, Anyway, let's talk about Sacha. I mean, you sang his praises, and he's, like you said, his dad responded to it as well. And I was still said to you, I would have told you to calm down if you weren't right, because you definitely were right. Sacha is a superstar. We've said it many, many times before, and he's just proven it again. Only 36 minutes, but he 2 try assists, didn't miss one kick except for that one kick it to the touch to the side, and then one tackle he missed that cost us a try. Otherwise, it was an exceptional game.
22 years old. I think the good ones, the really, really good ones, the Fronstein, Pollard was beating All Blacks at 820. I think you throw them in. I think it's okay. I think it's okay because I don't really feel like Sacha's confidence is assailable. I think it's an unassailable confidence. It's bred of either good parenting, good training, that feeling you have when you're really good at something. Like, there's something most of us are really, really good at, and there's just no one who can talk you out of it. Sacha's good at rugby. He's good at footballing codes. He's probably really good at soccer too. Ability of space, recognition of space, spatial relations, whatever that thing is in your brain, and then it translates to the quick twitch muscles, but also you're calm at it. He has all those things in spades. So I think you would say he's one you want to test out for a long time. Like, you give him a leash. You actually say, you've got 10 matches, like, guaranteed. Like, as a coach, I would literally go to him and say that I'm giving you the reins. Every time we play someone besides, All Blacks and so forth, you are the starter. And then when it's All Blacks, you're the player 23. You're the guy who comes off and fills the holes for me and wins the match for me or saves the match. I would give him that. Other players, you don't. So you have a much shorter leash, and you say, perform or die, in or out, up or out. And I think Sacha's one you want to invest in. I think most teams, any intelligent team, Andy Farrell, Steve Borthwick would do that. They would crave a guy like Sacha because he fills so many holes. The big issue with Sacha is, will he be treated more like the 23, the Damien Willemse hybrid sort of type, the Fronstein, who can, it's a very important position, player 23. Beauden Barrett just showed you how important it is. He literally took a match that was going down the tubes, turned it around, and England did not win in New Zealand because player 23 can take the game away. Or is he viewed as a starter at 10 when he's not even a starter at 10 at the Stormers? So that's actually the conundrum.
It's the same as Jan-Hendrik Wessels not being a starting prop at the Bulls, but he's a starting prop for the Springboks. That's a major problem. Yeah. No, I would agree with that approach. To me, to use him as a utility player is a waste. He's not a Fronstein. Fronstein was a good rugby player, even an exceptional rugby player. Same with Damien Willemse. Sacha is a once-in-a-lifetime player, once in a generation. There's a difference. To do that to him is going to be a waste. Are you going to, extend his career, make him, give him a bit more longevity? Maybe in 3-4 years' time, he's the number one. I don't know. Maybe that's the approach. But for me, like you just said, throw him in at the deep end, make him swim. Well, again, who do you leave out now? Are you going to play him instead of Pollard?
Yeah. So Pollard is a knockout fly-off, and you know what you get from him. I think in Buckland, you could literally see Pollard as being, as he's 30 years old. He's not that old. He'll be 34 in Australia in 2027. You can still see him being, that's how old Finn Russell, Dan Bigger, Owen Farrell, those guys were all 34, 33 in the last World Cup, and no one said they should stop playing. So you think Pollard can do that if he manages his body okay, and gets there as a knockout. But who's going to play those 30 tests in the middle? Who's going to do all that, and who can be ready to be the understudy in the very likely event that Pollard gets injured a couple times during that cycle? I think Sacha could be that guy. Now, this gets into other issues, which is in the camp, personality, who likes who doesn't mind being yelled at by this guy or that guy. And we know all that's part of rugby, like one guy can scream at you and tell you you're like, just an idiot, and you're okay with it. I don't know why. There's other things that make it okay. Another one can be tough to handle. So I think you don't want to have a silent 10. You never want to have a fly off that doesn't talk. You look at, what happens when you get carded. Andre's out. Who else was carded? Someone else in the back line was carded.
Goodly.
And so, suddenly you have to have someone at the back. You think, can Fassi do that? Is he able to instruct people? Is Manie? Manie's kind of a quiet guy. I don't know who was saying what to who, but maybe it was Lucanio. But somebody was getting told to be in the right place.
So glad you mentioned the name Lucanio, because that was exactly my next question. You mentioned to me during our chats over the weekend, maybe, just maybe, Lucanio is better suited to Tony's way. We call it Tony's way, for the great man. Instead of Jesse Kriel, the powerhouse Jesse Kriel, who's played out of his skin for how many games now? Basically won us a World Cup almost on his own as well. Heroic defense. I'll never forget that picture of him walking off the field after the game against France, bleeding. The typical warrior image that you would have. But Lucanio also is an exceptional player. What do you think? Is he maybe not a better choice going forward?
In my graphic novel that's coming out not too long from now, about rugby positions, I've described number 13 as the Baryshnikov with the Kalashnikov. You could view Jesse Kriel as the Kalashnikov, and you could view as the Baryshnikov. The question is, can either of them do both? Was known as a jackling midfielder for the Sharks, and that's what he made his name and getting over the ball in rucks. So he's got that. I think he can really blitz someone too. It's just that he had a knee that was Swiss cheese, and I think the big thing I got from this weekend was when he had to step, and he kind of did it for fun. He was almost toying with the Portuguese guy at the end. It looked good. It looked like he trusted it. That was the big thing for me. That was one moment where I thought, hey, now we got two 13s again. And I think it's really better for the Boks to have a Kriel and an Arm. I think it's better for the Boks to have the ballet guy, dancer, and the guy with the machine gun, and then just keep making each other better. I think if at every position you had what we have at 9, where you don't even really know who's the best, I think that's good. It's healthy. Can you pick one? Can you say who's number 13? Who's the best one between Kriel and Arm? I don't know. It depends who you play.
Just before we move on to the other things, Salman Moerat, either or both as a captain and as a player, number 4 lock, your impressions on that?
Well, you got to call a line out, and you got to have reliable line out ball. He's got really good hands. He actually is a really good distributor of the ball. So if you want to use him in a pod, and he's the first guy, he's like, the Irish use a diamond pod where you have a guy in the beginning, and then you have a tip, and then you have a hard line inside, and then you have a guy trailing. Moerat's really good because he's big, he's rangy, he gets the ball free. I'm just not sure he's able to play lock. You look at a natural successor for Leeuwit. If Leeuwit de Jager never gets back, I would almost move Arge in there and say, so you're my guy with Eben. We're just going to have two bastards in the middle. Highly skilled, as fleet as some backs, and not one dimensional, but still like we can collect the debt, we can pick you up by the hair and throw you in the rubbish bin. I just never seen someone like it, Matt. I kind of want to see him. I want to see him do something wrong. I want him to commit a sin. I want him to do something sinful on the pitch. And I think you saw him talking to the referee, and it was very nice. I thought, was Holly Davidson's her name? He approached her really well. There was none of that sort of like toxic masculinity, but I'm not sure that's what you want from a lock, is to be exceptionally polite. I think the positions on the pitch, where you're the biggest guy on the pitch, you also want to be the meanest.
Do you think maybe the fact that they made him captain sort of held him back a little bit rather than allow him to develop his game, be the player that he is? He would not have been picked as a number 4 lock if he couldn't play that position. But I think maybe that the added responsibility and the fact, and I'm going to put it out, the fact that there was a woman, a ref, he had to treat her with a bit more respect, maybe. I don't know. And I'm not saying that I think she had an exceptional game. I know people are going to crucify me once again for that, but that's my opinion. Maybe leave him alone. Let him play the game. Get someone else to be the captain.
They obviously trust him. He's respected by their players. All I'm saying is he could definitely be a captain. He can play the captain role. By the way, on the referees, I've maintained that women are exceptionally suited. And this is all generalizations. There's always exceptions, guys. But they're really good at balancing the, unlimited needs of multiple people at the same time, peripheral vision, doing more than one thing at the same time. I think you almost describe that for a woman and say they're really good adjudicators. It's like being a teacher of 20 people in a classroom and not being unfair. I really think they do well. And I think actually if we get over our stuck in the mud stuff from all the stereotypes, we realize that I think, that was never an easy test to referee. Portuguese obviously came in, wanting to rattle cages. It was like their Super Bowl. It was like their World Cup final. And you had a lot of people who weren't used to playing with each other. So that was fine. My point on Salman is that if you just view him as a Rob Simmons, the guy who got 100 caps for the Australia, but was never really beloved by Wallaby fans because he just seemed to do the job. I feel like right now Moerat is a guy who does the job. What I want him to see is, I want to see him somewhere just do something wrong. I don't know, just lose your shit and come in charging. So yeah, it may be handicapping him to always view him as the good boy, the prefect.
All right, let's talk about defense quickly. Rassie's been on about the fact that lower tackle heights is teachable, it's coachable, and under Jock, they've done that quite well. Lately, that seems to be, becoming a problem. Andre, bit of a high tackle. I know he bent his knees and everything, but he's a big guy, and he still went in quite high. To me, there was quite clear head-on-head contact. I mean, the guy was out like a light, went off the rest of the game. The discipline in general was a bit of a problem, I would think. It's starting to become a bit of a problem. 3 cards in one game, that's not acceptable.
Yeah, so you take a guy, I actually don't know his name, but he's called Progressive Rugby on Twitter and X. And, he is really one of those ardent, strident, people who follow rugby, but really want to have a different game than maybe a lot of us think we want to have. And what he said in my little chat with him was the Springboks are known as being the best, if not, they're probably the best team at height in tackle. So this is not characterizing them. This is a little bit of an anomaly. It's a one-off, or like you say, it may be a worrying trend beginning to start. I actually don't think it's a trend. I think we're still the best at getting big men down. You look at Etzebeth, you look at Snyman, you look at Mostert. They really are not known for going high. And if you look at just pure facts, which is cards for high tackles, Springboks are near the top. That being said, Andre's not that good at that. Andre does have form. Andre does get carded in the Premiership for high tackles. Andre is not as flexible. Go back to the flexibility issue. Mm-hmm. He has not been someone who has shown himself amenable. It's almost like an irony. Rassie did that very funny video before he started doing not funny videos. But the funny video was where he was teaching Andre to go higher, when he wasn't properly rewarded for the Farrell tackle to his head. Yeah. It's almost like Andre listened too closely and he keeps going higher. I'm going to say this to Andre, my brother. You have someone with a ball up that high, his ribs exposed. Break his ribs. What are you doing trying to kiss him? So it's not a question of going hard or soft. I'm saying you can really hurt the guy in a legal way because it's still okay to tackle someone's ribs into their throat. Why on earth are you going that high waiting? It doesn't make sense. There was nothing to wait for. It was time to Jesse Kriel him. Jesse Kriel would have literally unloaded on him with the Kalashnikov there. So I think we know to don't say when something bad happens to you, who did this to us, or don't immediately start saying persecution complex. Just take it as it is and say, what could we have done better? Could Andre have lowered his height and hit him like a truck? Yes, he could have. Would that have probably put the guy out of the game, but in a legal way? Yes, probably, because rugby is still about hurting someone legally.
And then yeah, we've been accused of a lot of things after the croc roll incident between Doris and Ryan. I
It's
can't
not a
bear.
croc roll. It's the gecko roll. It's
No,
not a croc roll.
Kirtley was a gecko. I called it a jelly roll. So, I mean, I can't think it's the same thing. And are we being completely subjective here? Are we one-eyed? To me, it wasn't remotely the same thing.
No, I don't think I see the world one-eyed at all ever. So here's the thing, and it's sort of a syndrome we have now. We have a new thing in the game and we say something is wrong, and then we want to erase all gradations and have no nuance at all about anything that is now remotely like a baby crocodile or a crocodile roll or a gator roll or whatever, a lizard roll. They're not the same thing, guys. The whole point of a croc roll being outlawed is that it can ruin someone's knee and it can break their leg and it can put them out of the game for a while, a la Marx. No one's suggesting that if Grant Williams goes and tries to move someone off a ruck and falls to the side on him, that it's instinctively a croc roll. There are constituent parts to it, and there's always a gradation. Just like there's degree of danger and risk in aerial battles or high tackles, or if someone hits you late, there's going to be some, discretion used. I think if you look at that and in the light of day, you put it alongside the Kalen Doris, James Ryan shifting of Malcolm Marx, then like even a 4-year-old child looking at it would say, those aren't the same things. An honest child at 8 years old would go, no, I can see that thing would hurt you. And this thing might make you tickle and have a chuckle. No, they're different. Now, that being said, if there's a thing that is technically wrong, then ping it. But I don't see a card from it. It just looks like something that the guy literally could have shrugged KLA off and it would have been nothing.
Okay, and we covered most of the guys and the players and everything else. Just in terms of anybody else you want to talk about, maybe?
Morne van den Berg. I actually didn't think there would be such a big difference from having from the base, strong-armed thrower. And Morne really was enlivening the Tony. I think maybe the Tony depends on having no fuffing around. I think you have to get the ball from base to receiver.
Good.
I've mused around this idea of like actually doing an NFL pass to the flank. Like if you could train a 9 to just stand up and gun one to Cheston Colby, he's all alone with about 20 meters of space around him, I think we'd score a try every time. No, I think there's a really big premium placed on getting the ball clear. And then I think just having that sort of DuPont-like strength in 9. He looks like a load from the back. Like he looks like someone who's really hard to put down at 9.
And of course, you need to be able to pass through your legs without looking who's behind you.
And fool the cameraman. There were several times where you had Morne and you had Sacha on, and the camera had no idea where the ball was.
The nice thing about Morne is how well he clicked with Sacha immediately. And those two looked like a good combination.
Yeah, game recognizes game. I think you have two ballers, they always have fun.
And the other guy, talking about ballers, and the other third yellow card that we had, the third one, his first one turned into a red card, was Q and Horn. A game to remember and a game to forget for him, all in the same breath. Shame, man. He came out and scored a try. He played exceptionally well and then did something completely stupid. Like, I think now lying in bed at night, you think, what was I thinking? How could I do that? I mean, that's such an elementary error for your first test. But I mean, still, he made his mark and no one else can pick him now. So he's now playing for South Africa.
True, exactly. He just got too horny, man. No, I imagine when he did those things that I imagine our friend Rian Lowe, Ringo, and I could just see him die in heaven because he is such a big backer of the Lions. And there's this theory of like, there's not enough lions in the Boks. So that was interesting to have some sharks, some lions. It might have been a sort of clever way for Rassie and the guys as well to sort of solve some of these provincial debates. Go, okay, let's just see what happens. And then go, oh, look, so can't use him.
No, well, I must say, I quite liked him. That was fun for me. Now, I think the test in general was a success. I think this whole idea of playing against a lower tier nation worked better than I would have expected. I mentioned right in the beginning, I thought we actually had a poll out to say whether people think we're going to score a century or not. And roughly half said yes and roughly half said no. And then when we didn't, I maintained my argument that we scored 60-something points with 14 players most of the game and 13 players some of the game. I think with a full squad of players, we might have gotten close to 100.
Okay. So first of all, these tier two teams, they have plenty of players who play professional rugby at top teams across the world. So you're no longer looking for the Namibia type scores all the time when you play Georgia, Portugal, and Fiji. Fiji had a tough time against the All Blacks, and they kind of looked like they regressed, with coaching change. But I think you get something out of playing a team that you're supposed to win, you do win, and you put 10 tries on. Australia had 6 tries, New Zealand 7 tries. To some extent, you get to practice something you don't get to ever practice when you play England or Ireland, which is breaks, support lines. What do you do when 10% of your carries end up in a line break? That's what the Boks developed. So 10% of your carries are landing in a line break. 25% of the Boks carries busted a tackle. For New Zealand, it was 40% of those busted a tackle, 10% line breaks. Both New Zealand and South Africa got to have 700 meters plus in yards carried. The Boks only had to make 59 tackles. So when do you get to play a game where you don't only make 59 tackles? What it conspires to help you see is how many passes I want, how do I finish off breaks? I can grade myself not on the score itself, 64-21, that's fine, comfortable, is, what could have been avoided on the 21? And could we have actually maximized those breaks? 14 line breaks, should we score that? Yeah, that's about right. And then I think the other thing you look at is the sort of the typology of how these attacks worked. You look at All Blacks and Springboks on the weekend, it's actually a carbon copy. It's almost identical who they use to carry. The one edge, the Springboks formed good mauls. That will be help them in the Rugby Championship. However, and turnovers lost by the All Blacks was trouble. But also you look at the All Blacks and they really did attack a little bit better still. They had a little bit more precision and finishing ability than the Boks did. So you could look at the coaches and they'll work on that. One glaring thing I've looked at for a while now is offloads. Has South Africa turned into the offload country? The Bulls offload at will. The Boks are now offloading. They're looking for that now in the tackle, and they appear to be using it as a weapon. I think there's still a value in playing teams that you're supposed to win. I think there's value in that if you're an analytical person.
I wanted to say something about the Bulls offloading. I had a conversation with Kennedy Tsimba. He's the backline coach for the Bulls, for the Currie Cup, but he was tasked at the beginning of the season to go overseas and look at other sports. I don't know if I've told you this before. So I visited basketball teams, baseball teams, soccer teams, Australian rules, league, and just to see what the differences were, what we could learn from them. And that is a big part of the reason why the Bulls have been playing the game that they've been playing this year, from what Kennedy Tsimba was bringing to the party. That was quite an interesting conversation. But the other side of that coin was he said they were quite keen to know what we could teach them because, we're the World Cup champions and being South African and the like. So I think you're right. In terms of offloading, that's definitely somewhere they're moving towards. But you mentioned they only made 59 tackles. But in the same breath, they missed 25. And they let in 3 tries against Portugal. I know they only had 14 players and sometimes 13 players on the field, but that was their own fault. Isn't that something that we should be worried about a bit?
Well, I mean, not really. I think it's also one of those things where the coaches get to say to the adoring public, and this is why we don't play that loose, because the problem of our sport is lost, L-O-S-T, ball. It's always the thing that makes us different. In NFL, you can hold the ball on forever. It's hardly really difficult to have a turnover. In many sports, whether cricket doesn't really have an analogy. So basketball is the best analogy, which is if you're playing loose and you're trying to have a lot of crazy assists and, highlight reel dunks, you're also going to give the ball up a lot. So the ratio between what you're getting out of it and not, so 64-21, you take that every day, right? But that's not possible against All Blacks. You're not going to have a game where you score 64-21. And if you did, you'd probably be on the wrong side of it. So, I think they're always thinking about how to develop quick ball. You can kick to contest, you can kick to pin down, to contain. But an offload is one of those things, and it's very analogous to the NBA actually, where you can pull a rabbit out of the hat and you can finish a line break. Look at Sacha holding, like a triple break on a play, and then the very last minute, second, the offload around, the wrap around. It reminded me of, I think it was 2013. both Dwayne Vermeulen and then Francois Lowe put Habana free by doing that late offload, because there's nothing you can do in rugby to defend against a late offload. If you commit your guy that well, not just hold him with two hands and dummy, but actually take him into contact with someone else and offload, you got a line break guaranteed. So I get the obsession with it. I think Joe Schmidt has always been against offloads. Some coaches hate offloads. They think it's an accident waiting to happen. It's all about choosing the right moment to offload. Snyman looks like he has a green light to offload against anybody at any time, because he just has an ability to see over everybody. He's like like a point guard. He's like running like Magic Johnson, able to see over everyone and palm it. He also looks like he can hold the ball like it's a tennis ball. So that really helps as well.
Yeah, he's got huge hands. Yeah, no, that's a fact. I wanted to ask you something else. You were talking about Morne van der Berg earlier about the NFL style pass, and we talked about sports having an influence. Like, is there any rule against, for example, standing on this touchline and then throwing a quarterback style pass to the other touchline, as long as it's going backwards? Or will that be allowed or not?
There's no rule against it. Who did that quite a bit back in the day was another Morne du Plessis. He was very fond of that. He would stand in the middle. He was a tall number 8, and you wouldn't know which one he was going to, but he would throw it to a Western Province wing on the run, and it really worked. For 1 year, we had a guy who came over and played in my high school from Houston, and he could throw a line-out ball across the entire breadth of the field, and we used it, in specific moments, and it always worked because no one was ready for someone to throw a 40-meter pass. No, I think the shifting of attack, whether you're playing football. So soccer, it's all about the ability to shift the attack quickly. The team who's able to take it from left to right the quickest without losing possession is almost always the winner. And rugby is so much more of a territory game. So coaches are very leery of doing things to manufacture a break if it could also result in that sort of James Lowe streakaway try that Ireland did and was disallowed. But that is their big nightmare, is we did all this stuff to get free on the side, and now we have no one there to defend and no one to resource the ruck. So that's why we don't do as many things. I'm still convinced, however, if you could throw to the middle back of a line out to Archie, and he could literally take the ball in one hand and then NFL it to Lecanio Arm in one motion, you would change the game of rugby forever, because it's just impossible to get someone there. They have to be 10 meters back. Now you have Jesse Kriel on the run at full pace, or a Sacha at full pace. You have so much space. So the creating space has always been a little bit too traditional for me in rugby. I think there's a way to create that space besides kicking.
Yeah. All right. We just invented a new game called Harry Ball. It
takes a special player like Archie, who could literally be like a quarterback. When he's up there taking lineup ball, I don't know about you, but it looks like so easy to him. He just he can take the ball without even looking at it.
But the thing is, he looks like an NBA player. He's got the length or height for it. And then combined with the skills of a rugby player and an NFL, he's exactly the right person to do it. Catch it like this, one turn, twist, and pass it, 50 meters down towards the next, or even to Kirtley on the other side or something, or Colby for that matter.
The Union of Nines is going to protest us and go on strike. No, don't cut us out.
Yeah, we have a role to play.
This is the Lekker Rugby Pod with Harry Jones and MV Velman.